designing a life, not a day, is one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern living. We have been trained to believe that productivity is about surviving the next meeting, the next deadline, the next obligation. We measure success in hours worked, emails answered, tasks completed, and while these activities give us the illusion of progress, they rarely bring us closer to the life we say we want. Because a life is not built in fragments, a life is built in direction. Most people wake up and immediately enter reaction mode. The phone lights up, the notifications start speaking. The world tells them what deserves attention. And without realizing it, they surrender their day before it even begins. They live dictated by urgency, not guided by intention. They are always busy, yet strangely unfulfilled, always moving, yet somehow standing still. Designing a life begins with a shift in thinking. It begins when you stop asking, "What do I need to do today?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming through the choices I make today?" Because every decision, no matter how small, is a vote for the person you are turning into. You are never just choosing what to do. You are choosing what kind of life you are creating, and here is where most people struggle. They chase comfort. They chase convenience. They chase instant validation, but a well-designed life is not optimized for comfort. It is optimized for meaning, and meaning does not live in shortcuts. Meaning lives in commitment. It lives in alignment. It lives in the courage to say no to what feels easy so you can say yes to what truly matters. We often mistake motion for progress. We fill our calendars, respond to every demand, run from one obligation to another, and we tell ourselves we are being productive. But movement without direction is just exhaustion with decoration. True progress requires clarity, and clarity requires pausing long enough to ask the hard questions. Why am I doing this? Where is this leading me? Does this path reflect the life I envision, or just the life that was handed to me? A life designed intentionally is not one that avoids struggle, it is one that chooses its struggle wisely. Because struggle is unavoidable, resistance is guaranteed, failure will visit you more than once. The difference is not whether challenges appear, but whether they serve your growth or steal your energy. When you design your life, even your difficulties carry purpose. It is easy to commit when motivation is high. It is easy to show discipline when the results are immediate, but life is not built in adrenaline, it is built in routine, in repetition, in the quiet hours when no one is applauding, in the moments when quitting would be easier, yet you continue anyway because your vision is stronger than your feelings. Designing a life means understanding that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Goals inspire, but systems transform. And your systems are nothing more than the habits you choose to repeat every day. How you think, how you respond, how you prioritize. These patterns become your identity long before they become your outcome. Many people say they want success, fulfillment, impact, peace, but they are not willing to become the person those things require. And this is where design becomes different from dreaming. Dreaming is passive, designing is active. Dreaming is wishing for a better future. Designing is constructing it one choice at a time. A well-designed life is not ruled by impulse. It is guided by values. Values are not what you say you believe. Values are what you consistently demonstrate when no one is watching. They show up in how you treat people when they cannot benefit you. They reveal themselves in what you protect, what you prioritize, and what you refuse to compromise. When your life is designed around your values, decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You no longer chase every opportunity. You choose the right ones. You no longer say yes out of fear. You say yes out of alignment. And you say no, not because you are avoiding something, but because you are protecting something far more important. A powerful life is not built on perfection. It is built on consistency. It is not shaped by occasional brilliance, but by steady effort. The mundane, the boring, the repetitive moments are the true builders of greatness, but most people abandon the process because it does not feel exciting. They seek dramatic transformation instead of steady evolution. And yet, the most extraordinary lives are the result of ordinary actions done with extraordinary intention. Designing a life also means accepting responsibility for where you are, not blame, responsibility, because blame gives you an excuse to stay the same. Responsibility gives you power to change. When you recognize that your choices, not your circumstances, are the primary architects of your reality, you reclaim control. And control is the beginning of design. This does not mean everything that happens is your fault. It means everything that happens is your opportunity to respond with purpose. It means you stop waiting for life to improve and start becoming the kind of person who improves life. There will be days when you feel lost, days when your energy fades, days when doubt creeps in and whispers that the effort is not worth it. But designing a life means continuing anyway. It means honoring your vision even when your emotions hesitate. It means trusting the long-term direction even when the short-term road feels uncertain, because discipline is not punishment. Discipline is devotion. It is proof that your future matters more than your fleeting comfort. We often celebrate overnight success without acknowledging the years of invisible preparation behind it. The early mornings, the silent sacrifices, the consistent self-correction, the setbacks that refined character. A designed life is patient. It understands that time is not the enemy, impatience is, and this patience is not passive. It is focused, it is intentional, it is guided by a deep understanding that the most meaningful results take time to mature. When you design your life, you no longer live at the mercy of your mood, you live according to your mission. You stop waiting for inspiration and start building the conditions that make inspiration inevitable. You do not drift through existence, you navigate it with purpose, and slowly, without realizing it, your identity begins to change. You become more deliberate, more grounded, more aligned. Your confidence grows not from external validation, but from internal consistency. You trust yourself because you have proven again and again that you follow through. This is what separates those who merely exist from those who truly live. A day-focused mindset asks, how do I survive today? A life-focused mindset asks, what kind of legacy am I leaving? The former is reactive, the latter is strategic. The former is temporary, the latter is transformational. There is nothing wrong with planning a day, but when the day becomes the ultimate focus, the bigger picture disappears. When you see only the immediate demands, you lose sight of the meaning behind them, and without meaning, even the most productive day can feel empty. A designed life gives every day a reason. It connects the small tasks to a larger narrative. It transforms effort into contribution. It turns struggle into significance. You begin to see that every action, every sacrifice, every moment of discipline is not just for now. It is part of something bigger than you, and that is where fulfillment is born, not in achievement alone, but in alignment. Not in speed, but in direction, not in applause, but in authenticity. So design your life with courage. Choose intention over impulse, purpose over pressure, meaning over momentary satisfaction. Create habits that reflect your highest values. Surround yourself with people who challenge your growth, not just comfort your ego. Speak the truth even when silence feels safer. Persist when quitting feels logical, because in the end, the life you live will not be defined by how busy you were, how many tasks you completed, or how perfectly you kept your schedule. It will be defined by the impact you made, the integrity you showed, the consistency you maintained, the person you became, and that person is not created in a single inspired moment. That person is built daily, deliberately, intentionally, courageously, through choices that honor the future over the now, through action that aligns with vision, through discipline that respects meaning. Design your life, not just your day, because a day ends when the sun sets, but a life echoes long after you've gone. Designing a life, not a day, requires an uncomfortable level of honesty. It forces us to confront a reality most prefer to ignore, that many of the lives we live are not truly chosen, they are inherited, improvised, or simply accepted. We follow routines handed to us by expectation, culture, fear, or habit. We operate on default settings, mistaking momentum for meaning, assuming that if we stay busy enough, fulfillment will eventually arrive. But fulfillment does not arrive by accident, it arrives by design. A day is a unit of survival. A life is a declaration of intent. When you design your life, you move from asking, "How do I get through today?" to asking, "Why does today matter at all?" You begin to see that your calendar is not just a schedule, it is a reflection of your priorities, and your priorities, repeated long enough, become the story of who you are. Most people live in fragments, one version of themselves at work, another at home, another online, another when they are alone. But a designed life is integrated, it is congruent, it is when who you are in private matches who you claim to be in public. And that alignment does not happen by chance. It happens when you decide that your life will no longer be driven by convenience, but by coherence. We are conditioned to optimize for speed, to finish quickly, to achieve faster, to move on to the next thing. But life is not a race to complete experiences, it is a process of becoming. And becoming requires patience, reflection, restraint, and the courage to slow down long enough to ask what truly matters. When you design your life, you understand that every shortcut comes with a cost. You realize that every compromise today shapes the limitations of tomorrow. You begin to see that the choices you call small are the very choices that define your future, the conversations you avoid, the discipline you delay, the promises you break to yourself. These are not isolated moments, they are patterns. And patterns become identity. A designed life is not built on intensity alone, it is built on consistency. Anyone can feel inspired for a week, anyone can commit for a month, but a life is constructed in years, in decades, in the quiet repetition of doing what matters long after the initial excitement has faded. And that is why so few design their lives, because it requires long obedience in the same direction. We live in a culture that celebrates immediate results, we applaud quick wins, we praise visible success. Yet the most meaningful growth is invisible. It is the mindset shift no one sees, the habits no one applauds, the discipline no one posts about, the decision to stay when leaving would be easier, the choice to be patient when rushing would be praised. Designing a life requires you to think beyond applause, to operate beyond validation. It demands that you invest in the unseen future more than the visible present. And that is uncomfortable because humans crave certainty. We want the guarantee before the effort. We want proof before commitment. But design requires trust. Trust in your purpose, trust in your process, trust in the person you are becoming. You do not design a life by reacting emotionally to every circumstance. You design it by responding intentionally to each situation. There is a difference. Reaction is instinctive, design is deliberate, reaction is driven by pressure. Design is guided by principle, and principle is what sustains you when motivation fades. A life designed with purpose understands that success is not defined by how much you accomplish, but by how aligned you are with the reason you exist. You can achieve everything and still feel empty if you are building the wrong thing, and you can struggle deeply and still feel fulfilled if you are building what matters. Designing a life also means redefining failure. It means understanding that failure is not an obstacle to design, it is a necessary tool of it. Every mistake reveals direction, every setback refines vision, every delay clarifies intention, but only if you are brave enough to learn instead of defend. Most people don't fail because they lack talent, they fail because they lack direction, and direction does not come from external validation. It comes from internal clarity. It comes from knowing your why so deeply that even when the how changes, your foundation remains unshaken. A well-designed life is resilient, not because it avoids hardship, but because it expects it. It plans for it. It grows through it, and instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" it asks, "What is this teaching me?" That shift in perspective is not weakness, it is maturity, it is leadership over self. When you design your life, you stop living at the mercy of your environment. Your circumstances may influence you, but they do not define you, because your identity is not shaped by what happens, but by how you choose to respond. And response is where power lies. Many people spend their lives chasing balance, assuming that one day things will finally stabilize. But a designed life does not seek balance as a destination. It seeks rhythm, a rhythm that reflects purpose, values, and intention. Some seasons will demand more, some will invite rest. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. Design is not rigid. It is structured flexibility. It adapts without losing its essence. It evolves without abandoning its foundation. It grows with awareness rather than impulsiveness, and through that awareness you stop drifting and start steering. A designed life does not constantly ask what is easy, it asks what is right. It understands that what is right often feels difficult in the beginning but becomes liberating in the end. And what is easy in the moment often becomes painful in the long run. You cannot design a meaningful life without confronting discomfort. Growth demands friction, progress demands tension, transformation demands the courage to step into uncertainty without knowing all the answers. But design does not require perfection, it requires commitment to continuous alignment. One day you will realize that your life is not defined by the grand moments alone, but by the ordinary decisions you made repeatedly. The mornings you chose discipline over delay, the conversations you chose honesty over avoidance, the boundaries you set even when they were misunderstood, the time you invested instead of consuming. These are the quiet architects of a powerful life. Designing a life also means deciding what you will no longer tolerate. The distractions, the excuses, the self-doubt disguised as humility, the comfort zones disguised as safety. When you draw these lines, you are not limiting yourself, you are defining yourself. You begin to realize that time is your most valuable asset, and where you place it reveals who you truly are. Not who you say you are, not who you hope to be, but who you are becoming in practice, because intention without action is merely fantasy. And as the years progress, something remarkable happens. You gain clarity not just about what you want, but about who you are. Your choices become more deliberate, your voice more authentic, your direction more focused, not because life got easier, but because you became stronger in how you navigate it. That is what it means to design a life. It is leadership over self before leadership over others. It is taking responsibility for your direction. It is refusing to leave your existence to chance. A life by accident looks busy but feels hollow. A life by design looks intentional and feels meaningful. One chases approval, the other creates impact. One follows trends, the other sets standards. You do not need to have every detail figured out to begin designing your life. You only need the courage to start asking better questions. Who am I becoming? Does this choice reflect my values? Will this decision honor my future self? Will this action move me closer to purpose or further from it? Because the truth is simple, even if it is uncomfortable, every life is designed. The only question is whether it is designed consciously or by default. And the moment you choose consciousness, the moment you choose intention, the moment you choose alignment over autopilot, you take your first step from merely existing to truly living. You stop managing time and start shaping destiny. You stop surviving days and start constructing a legacy. You stop reacting to life and start creating it, and in that moment, something profound shifts. You no longer fear the future. You take ownership of it, not because you control everything, but because you finally control yourself. And that is the foundation of a life that is not just lived, but deliberately, meaningfully, and courageously designed. Designing a life, not a day, is an act of rebellion in a world that rewards immediacy. It is a quiet resistance against the culture of instant gratification, against the belief that comfort is the ultimate goal, against the idea that speed is proof of progress. When you design a life, you are choosing depth over distraction, intention over impulse, and legacy over convenience. Most people do not fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they lack direction. They spend years perfecting the skill of getting through today while neglecting the responsibility of building tomorrow. They master urgency and ignore purpose. They learn how to respond but never how to lead, and so they drift, hoping that somehow, one day, clarity will arrive on its own. But clarity does not arrive. Clarity is created. A designed life begins the moment you realize that your time is finite and your choices are shaping more than your schedule. Every action is a statement, every priority is a declaration, every habit is a message to your future self saying this is the path we have chosen. And when you understand that, you stop treating your days as isolated events and start seeing them as building blocks of something bigger than the present moment. Most people plan their days based on pressure, what is urgent, what is demanded, what is screaming for attention. But those who design their lives plan based on purpose, what matters, what aligns, what contributes to who they are becoming. And this difference is subtle but powerful. One is fueled by stress, the other is grounded in meaning. When you design a life, you stop asking what will make me feel good right now and start asking what will make me proud later. You become willing to delay comfort for character. You become willing to endure the difficult in service of the meaningful. And you understand that the discomfort of discipline is far less painful than the regret of neglect. The truth is, no one accidentally builds a remarkable life, no one stumbles into purpose, no one randomly develops consistent character. These things are created through conscious decision, repeated commitment, and unwavering clarity. And clarity only comes when you slow down enough to face the uncomfortable truths about how you are currently living. You begin to notice that some of your habits do not serve you, even if they soothe you, that some of your comforts are actually cages, that some of the patterns you call normal are quietly holding you back, and designing a life means having the courage to challenge what feels familiar in order to build what feels meaningful. A poorly designed life is reactive. It waits to be told what to do, it waits for approval, it waits for perfect conditions. But a well-designed life is proactive. It creates its own conditions. It defines its own values. It sets its own standards, even when the world pressures it to conform. The challenge is that design is not glamorous. It is not loud. It is not always visible. It happens in the unseen moments. In the decision to wake up earlier, in the choice to be honest when silence would be easier, in the discipline to continue when quitting would be justified. These moments rarely receive applause, yet they shape everything. Designing a life means accepting that feelings are not reliable leaders. Emotions fluctuate, motivation fades, energy rises and falls, but principles remain. And when you build your life around principles instead of moods, you develop stability. You develop direction. You create a foundation that holds even when conditions shift. Most people let their environment dictate their behavior. They adjust their character to suit the room. They adapt their values to avoid discomfort. But the designer of a life shifts the environment instead. They become the steady presence in the room. They bring clarity where there is confusion. They embody the consistency others only talk about. And that consistency is not accidental. It is practiced. It is chosen. It is refined daily. We often believe that designing a life requires a clear destination, but it starts with a clear direction. You do not need every detail of the future to take the first intentional step. You only need to know the values you refuse to compromise and the purpose you are willing to serve. The path will unfold as you walk it, but only if you walk it deliberately. A designed life also changes how you view time. Time is no longer something to kill or escape. It becomes something to honor, something to invest, something to respect. You begin to see that every hour spent is a reflection of your priorities, and if your priorities do not align with your purpose, you will eventually feel the disconnect. That disconnect shows up as burnout, as emptiness, as quiet dissatisfaction even when everything seems fine on the surface. And the cure is not more productivity. The cure is alignment. Alignment between who you are, what you do, and why you do it. Designing a life means creating a narrative you believe in, a story that makes sense to you, a journey that reflects your values. Without this narrative, your efforts feel scattered, your achievements feel hollow, your progress feels incomplete. But when your life is designed with intention, even the hard days carry meaning. Even the failures contribute to growth. Even the delays serve a purpose because you are no longer moving randomly, you are moving with direction. You start to understand that every setback is feedback, every obstacle is information, every challenge is an invitation to refine who you are becoming. And instead of asking why me, you ask what now? What will this shape in me? What will I learn? How will this make me stronger? That mindset shifts everything. Suddenly, life is no longer happening to you, it is happening through you. A designed life is not obsessed with perfection, it is committed to progress. It understands that flaws are inevitable, but stagnation is optional. And so you measure success not by flawless execution, but by continuous alignment. Day by day, decision by decision, you begin to shape a version of yourself that is more intentional, more aware, more grounded. You stop drifting and start directing. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop surviving and start building. And this is where purpose becomes a lived experience, not just an idea. Purpose is no longer a concept you talk about. It becomes the reason behind your habits, your discipline, your choices, your sacrifices. It becomes the silent force guiding your direction even when the path feels unclear. Designing a life also requires solitude, moments of reflection, intentional pause, because without reflection, you repeat patterns unconsciously. And without awareness, you cannot change what no longer serves you. A designed life creates space for thought, for recalibration, for honest evaluation. And through that evaluation, you become more courageous. You begin to let go of what no longer fits. You outgrow relationships, routines, and roles that no longer align with who you are becoming. And while that process can be painful, it is also freeing. Because growth demands release, many people hold on to familiarity even when it suffocates them, but designers of life understand that letting go is part of becoming. And so they choose growth over comfort, purpose over popularity, alignment over approval. You begin to see that your life is not just about you, that your consistency influences others, that your courage inspires those who are afraid, that your discipline creates ripples beyond your immediate world. And so designing a life becomes not just a personal responsibility, but a contribution. You stop living only for personal gain and start considering impact. You stop asking what do I get and start asking what do I give, and in that shift fulfillment deepens. Because meaning is not found in accumulation, meaning is found in contribution. A designed life understands that leadership begins internally, that before you influence the world, you must lead yourself, that before you change your environment, you must change your habits, that before you build legacy, you must build character, and character is forged in the quiet choices no one sees, the moments of integrity, the commitment to show up when no one is watching, the courage to stand by your values even when it costs you. These moments do not trend, they transform. Designing a life is not about perfection, it is about ownership. Ownership of your choices, ownership of your time, ownership of your direction, because when you own these, you stop blaming circumstances and start shaping outcomes. You realize that while you cannot control everything, you can control how you respond. You can control what you prioritize. You can control the habits you cultivate, and in that control lies freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom of direction. And over time, as the years unfold, something remarkable happens. Your life begins to make sense, not because it was easy, but because it was intentional. Not because it was perfect, but because it was aligned. Not because you avoided struggle, but because you chose meaning. And when you look back, you will not remember every task you completed or every deadline you met. You will remember the choices that shaped who you became. The moments when you chose courage, the days when you honored your vision, the seasons when you stayed committed even when it was hard. That is the difference between a life lived by default and a life lived by design. One is guided by circumstance. The other is guided by purpose. One reacts to the world, the other shapes it. One survives days, the other builds legacy. And so the invitation is simple, even if the path is not. Do not merely manage time. Do not simply cope with today. Do not settle for surviving the next obligation. Instead, choose to shape the direction of your existence. Choose to live intentionally. Choose to align your actions with your values. Choose to design, because in the end, the question will never be how productive you were. The question will be how meaningful your life became, and meaning is not found in a single day. Meaning is built deliberately, repeatedly, courageously, through the quiet art of designing a life. Designing a life, not a day, demands a level of awareness that most people never slow down enough to develop. It requires the courage to step off the conveyor belt of routine and ask a question that feels both simple and unsettling. Is the way I am living actually aligned with who I want to become? Most people never ask this. They stay busy, distracted, and occupied, hoping that if they keep moving, clarity will magically appear. But clarity does not come from motion, it comes from intention. A day is something to get through, a life is something to shape. And the tragedy is that many people become experts at surviving their days while neglecting the responsibility of directing their lives. They become efficient at responding but ineffective at creating. They learn to cope, not to lead. They manage what is urgent but avoid what is important. And over time, they begin to feel a quiet dissatisfaction that they cannot explain because deep down they know they are living on autopilot. Designing a life starts when autopilot ends. It begins the moment you realize that your patterns are not just habits, they are architects. Your priorities are not just preferences, they are foundations. Your reactions are not just responses, they are rehearsals for the future. And if you do not intentionally design these elements, they will design you. Most people treat life like a series of disconnected events. A meeting here, a responsibility there, a goal this year, a dream someday, but a designed life sees continuity. It understands that everything you do today is feeding who you become tomorrow, that the smallest choices, repeated consistently, create the strongest identity. You are not becoming who you hope to become, you are becoming who your habits reflect, and that realization can be uncomfortable, because it forces you to confront the gap between intention and action, the space between who you say you want to be and the choices you make when no one is watching. But that discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a signal of awareness, and awareness is the first step toward design. Designing a life means recognizing that comfort is often the enemy of growth. Comfort whispers that this is good enough. Comfort encourages postponement. Comfort convinces you that change can wait, but growth does not live in comfort. Growth lives in challenge, adaptation, and disciplined effort. And those who design their lives choose growth not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. A designed life is intentional, not accidental. It is strategic, not impulsive. It is guided by purpose, not pressure. And that purpose becomes the compass that directs every major decision, every sacrifice, every commitment. Without purpose, effort becomes exhausting. With purpose, even struggle becomes meaningful. Most people wait until they feel ready to take action. They wait until the timing feels perfect. They wait until they are confident enough, prepared enough, supported enough. But a designed life understands that readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision, and confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is the result of action, so instead of waiting for courage, you act, and through action, courage grows. Designing a life also means accepting that discipline is not restriction. Discipline is freedom. It is the ability to say no to what distracts you so you can say yes to what matters. It is the structure that protects your focus. It is the consistency that builds momentum. Without discipline, inspiration fades. With discipline, vision comes to life. When you design your life, you begin to see beyond temporary pleasure. You start to understand that short-term comfort often robs long-term fulfillment, that the easy choice is rarely the meaningful one, and that true satisfaction is found not in indulgence but in alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions. Alignment between your purpose and your priorities. Alignment between the life you imagine and the life you practice. When alignment exists, progress feels purposeful. When it does not, even success can feel empty. A life by design also changes how you respond to setbacks. You stop seeing them as signs to retreat and start seeing them as instructions to refine. You understand that failure does not disqualify you. It educates you, it reveals where growth is required, it exposes where commitment must deepen. You no longer fear failure because you know it is part of the process. You no longer avoid discomfort because you understand it is shaping your strength. You no longer seek perfection because you value progress. This mindset does not make life easier, it makes life more intentional, and over time, intentionality creates momentum. Momentum builds confidence, confidence strengthens commitment, and commitment transforms identity. You begin to trust yourself not because everything is perfect, but because you consistently show up. You keep promises to yourself, you follow through, you do what you say you will do, even when it is inconvenient. And that integrity becomes the cornerstone of who you are. Designing a life also means choosing who you allow to influence it. Not every voice deserves access to your direction. Not every opinion deserves space in your decisions. A designed life protects its environment because environment shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. You become intentional about your surroundings, the people you engage with, the information you consume, the energy you allow near you. Because you understand that growth is not just about effort, it is about atmosphere. You cannot create a powerful life in a toxic environment without extraordinary awareness, and so you curate not to isolate, but to align. A designed life also requires patience, deep patience, because transformation does not happen overnight. It happens slowly, consistently, invisibly, until one day the results become undeniable. But those results are not sudden. They are simply finally visible, and most people quit before that moment. They assume the process is not working because the progress is not dramatic. They abandon the design because the change is not immediate. But those who understand life design know that time is a collaborator, not an enemy. They stay committed when results are quiet. They stay disciplined when motivation is low. They stay aligned when distractions are loud. And that is why they eventually stand out. Designing a life also means redefining success. Success is no longer about comparison. It is no longer about outperforming others. It becomes about consistency with self, about integrity, about progress toward purpose, about contribution beyond self-interest. You realize that chasing status feels hollow compared to living with meaning. That applause fades but impact remains. That recognition is fleeting but legacy endures, and so your choices shift. You stop asking, how can I look successful, and start asking, how can I become valuable? You stop pursuing attention and start pursuing excellence. You stop seeking validation and start seeking alignment. This does not isolate you, it strengthens you. And in that strength, others find inspiration because a life by design is not selfish, it ripples outward. Your discipline inspires, your clarity empowers, your consistency reassures, your courage proves what is possible. And suddenly, your life is no longer just about your journey. It is about the standards you set for others who are watching, even when you are unaware. Over time, something powerful happens. Your life stops feeling chaotic, not because everything is perfect, but because everything has direction. You feel grounded even in uncertainty, you feel focused even in complexity, you feel steady even in change. Because you are no longer drifting, you are steering, and that shift, that quiet internal shift, is the true essence of designing a life. You understand that you do not control every outcome, but you do control every choice. You do not dictate every circumstance, but you do dictate every response. And in that space between circumstance and response, you find your power. Designing a life is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who you truly are, stripping away the expectations, the fears, the labels, the noise, and revealing the version of you that lives with clarity, purpose, and intention. It is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is not about speed. It is about direction. It is not about surviving. It is about shaping. And while the world may reward those who move fast, it remembers those who move deliberately. So choose deliberately. Choose consciously. Choose with intention, because every day you wake up, you are not just given time. You are given an opportunity to reinforce the design of your life, to vote for the person you are becoming, to strengthen the alignment between your vision and your reality. And one day, when you look back, you will not measure your life by how busy you were or how many obligations you fulfilled. You will measure it by how consistent you were with your values, how deeply you honored your purpose, how bravely you lived the story you chose to write. A day ends, a life echoes, and the echo you leave behind will not come from chance. It will come from the quiet, steady, powerful decision to design your life rather than merely endure it. That is the difference between existing and living, between drifting and directing, between survival and legacy. And that difference is not created in a moment. It is created in thousands of choices made with courage, clarity, and intention. Design your life not for ease but for meaning, not for approval but for alignment, not for today alone, but for the story that will outlive you. Most people think life is a series of days. They measure it in hours, in tasks, in deadlines, in achievements checked off a list. They wake up already thinking about what they must survive before they can finally rest. They move from morning to night chasing productivity, chasing validation, chasing the next small win that makes them feel like they're moving forward. But forward to what? Toward who? Because when you only focus on getting through today, you lose sight of why today even matters. A day is temporary, a life is intentional. Designing a life is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is not about controlling every moment, but about choosing the meaning behind your moments. It is the shift from reacting to existing, to deciding to lead your own existence with purpose, and that shift changes everything. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they never define what they're building. They confuse motion with meaning. They believe that if they stay busy, life will somehow make sense. But busy without alignment only creates exhaustion, not fulfillment. Designing a life means stepping back and asking a difficult question. Who am I becoming through the way I live today? Not who you want people to think you are, not who society rewards you for appearing to be, but who you are shaping with every choice, every habit, every compromise, every sacrifice. Because life is not defined by one big decision. It is defined by thousands of small, often invisible decisions repeated over time. The way you speak to yourself, the way you respond to discomfort, the standards you accept, the discipline you avoid. These are not minor details, they are the blueprint. And when you design a life, you understand something most never stop to consider. Your future is built in silence. Not in applause, not in recognition, not in the moments that feel glamorous, but in the unseen moments when no one is watching and you choose growth anyway. When it would be easier to quit, but you don't. When comfort calls, but you choose progress. When distraction seduces, but you choose focus. A designed life does not rely on mood, it relies on meaning, because motivation is a guest, discipline is a resident. And the ones who build lives that matter do not live according to what feels easy today. They live according to what will matter tomorrow, next year, and long after they are gone. They create alignment between who they say they are and how they show up when no one demands excellence from them. Designing a life means understanding that clarity does not come first, commitment does. You don't wait for confidence before taking action. You take action, and confidence follows. You don't wait for certainty before beginning. You begin, and certainty forms through consistency. And in that consistency, something powerful happens. Identity forms. You stop trying to look successful and start becoming impactful. You stop chasing approval and start building integrity. You stop performing and start leading. Because when your life is designed, even your struggles have purpose. They are not interruptions, they are part of the blueprint. Every setback becomes instruction. Every failure becomes a refinement. Every challenge becomes a quiet sculptor, shaping you into the person you said you wanted to be. And that is what separates those who drift from those who create. Drifters hope life will inspire them. Creators decide who they will become. A designed life understands that comfort is seductive but costly. It whispers, you deserve to relax. It tells you, just wait another day. It persuades you to trade long-term greatness for short-term relief. And slowly, quietly, without drama, your potential begins to rust. But when you design a life, you reject the myth that ease equals happiness. You learn that fulfillment lives on the other side of resistance. You realize that the discomfort you avoid today becomes the regret you carry tomorrow. So you choose the harder path not because it is painful, but because it is purposeful. You build routines that protect your future, not just your present. You surround yourself with people who challenge your character instead of feeding your ego. You choose environments that nurture your growth instead of flattering your stagnation. Because design is intentional, and intentionality is powerful, a designed life is not reactive, it is responsive. It does not blame circumstances, it learns from them. It does not wait for permission, it moves with responsibility. It understands that leadership begins not with authority over others, but mastery over self, and self-mastery is not glamorous. It is quiet, it is disciplined, it is repetitive, it is doing the right thing even when no one claps for it. That is why most people don't do it, not because it is impossible, but because it is inconvenient. Designing a life forces you to confront the truth. You cannot have the life you want while holding on to the habits you love. You must let go of who you were to make room for who you must become, and that letting go is uncomfortable. It feels like loss, it feels like uncertainty, it feels like standing between two worlds, the familiar and the meaningful. But that space, that discomfort, that stretch, that is where transformation happens. A day demands energy. A life demands direction, and direction only comes from knowing your why, the reason behind your persistence, the reason behind your resilience, the reason behind getting back up when staying down would be so much easier. When you design a life, your why becomes your anchor. It grounds you when storms come. It reminds you who you are when doubt arrives. It steadies you when progress feels slow and invisible. Because progress often feels invisible before it becomes undeniable. And this is where most people give up. They measure success too early. They expect results before roots. They quit because their vision hasn't yet manifested. They abandon their mission because the silence feels louder than the dream. But a designed life understands time. It understands that meaningful things grow slowly, that real progress compounds. That patience isn't passive, it is strategic, and that resilience is not loud, but it is unstoppable. When you stop designing days and start designing a life, you no longer live for applause. You live for alignment. You no longer run for speed, you run for significance, and slowly you start to notice a shift. You wake up not asking, how do I survive today, but instead, how do I honor who I am becoming? You stop defining success by what others see and start defining it by how closely your life reflects your values. You measure progress not just in accomplishments, but in character, in depth, in consistency, because a powerful life is not built on talent alone. It is built on commitment to growth when growth feels uncomfortable. It is built on choosing principle over popularity, purpose over pressure, integrity over image, and when this becomes your rhythm, your life stops feeling scattered. It stops feeling accidental. It stops feeling like something happening to you. It becomes something you are consciously shaping. Not perfect, not effortless, but meaningful, and one day, far ahead of the moments you're living now, you'll look back and realize that it was never about how many days you conquered. It was about the life you chose to create, a life built not by chance but by choice, not by impulse but by intention, not by reaction but by design, because in the end the most powerful thing you can ever say is not that you stayed busy. It is that you lived on purpose, and that purpose was not found in a single morning or accomplished in a single night. It was shaped slowly, deliberately, patiently, over time, through courage, through discipline, through unwavering clarity. So don't just plan your schedule, design your path, don't just survive your days, define your life. Because today is temporary, but who you become lasts forever.